Ava had always been a lively, wide-eyed girl with bright blonde hair that seemed to catch the sunlight wherever she went. She lived in a small, close-knit neighborhood, the kind of place where people still stopped to talk on front porches and knew each other's first names. From the moment she learned to walk, she'd dash across the lawn, swirl in her mother's dresses, and fill the house with the echo of her laughter. Her family adored her energy and the natural warmth that shone through in her smile. Even as a toddler, she had a spark in her eyes that hinted at some grand destiny. By the time she was old enough to attend school, teachers noticed her tenacity. She was never afraid to raise her hand, ask a question, or help a friend. No one would have guessed that beneath the surface, something was brewing inside her body that would challenge every bit of that bright spirit. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more exclusive news. Summer arrived the year Ava turned 10, and she felt more tired than usual. She would wake up with headaches, find new bruises on her arms and legs, and wonder why they never quite went away. Then the day came when she could barely get out of bed. Her mother, alarmed by Ava's pallor and the worrying changes in her energy, whisked her off to the local children's hospital. The diagnosis of leukemia struck the family like a bolt from the blue. The doctors explained the tests, the plan for chemotherapy, and the possible side effects. Terms like white blood cells, bone marrow, and remission filled the small room, turning the once carefree atmosphere into one charged with anxiety. Ava tried to stay brave, studying her parents' faces to see if it was okay to cry, but fear flickered in her eyes. Deep inside, she knew she had a battle to fight. Their once simple life shifted in 1,000 small ways. Her father began putting in extra hours at the local garage where he worked, determined to support Ava's medical bills. Her mother quit her part-time job at the florist shop to shuttle her back and forth from treatments and keep an eye on her medications. The financial toll loomed over them like a dark cloud, overshadowing their every move. Bill after bill piled up, with insurance barely making a dent. Their savings seemed to vanish before their eyes. Despite this, they pressed on, determined to give Ava the best chance possible. In the midst of this turbulence, her parents refused to let the optimism that defined their family fade away. They read encouraging stories and pinned up uplifting quotes on the refrigerator. Even so, at night, Ava's mother would fold laundry in silence, occasionally letting tears slip. She kept them hidden, but Ava sensed her mother's worry. As the months wore on, Ava grew tired of feeling powerless. She hated the idea that her illness was forcing her parents to scrape by. Each day, she watched them grow more exhausted, saw the subtle lines etch themselves deeper into their faces, and recognized a certain sadness in their eyes. It made her heart ache. She yearned to help in any way she could, and she found the spark of an idea while flipping through an old photo album. She stopped on a picture of herself at 6 years old, standing behind a small, handmade lemonade stand at the end of their driveway. The stand was crooked, painted in bright yellows and oranges with big childlike letters spelling out lemonade. Her father had helped build it one summer afternoon. She remembered that day, the sticky sweetness on her tongue, the sun beaming down on her hair, and the triumphant feeling when she sold her first cup. That memory stood out as a stark contrast to her current reality, and it sparked a goal. She found the old stand in the corner of the garage, gathering dust and cobwebs. With her limited energy, Ava began cleaning and repainting it. She used the same bright yellows and oranges, wanting it to look cheerful and inviting. Every brushstroke felt like she was reclaiming something that had been taken from her. It wasn't just paint on wood, it was hope. Her mother discovered her one afternoon, rummaging through spare paint cans, coughing slightly, but determined to finish her work. Alarmed that her daughter was overexerting herself, she started to reprimand Ava for taking on too much. Then Ava explained she was setting up a lemonade stand again, only this time every penny earned would go toward her chemotherapy costs. It was her small way of fighting back. When word got out in the neighborhood that Ava was back behind her lemonade stand, it spread like wildfire. Neighbors wandered over one by one, curious to see the spunky girl they remembered at the bus stop, who now was waging a battle no child should ever face. They lined up on the sidewalk, dropping bills and coins into her chipped glass jar. Some folks brought small gifts, like get-well cards or teddy bears. Others asked her mother in hushed tones if there was anything else they could do. Occasionally, local kids stopped by to say hi and cheer her on. The lemonade stand transformed into a gathering spot of sorts, a bright booth that not only offered a sweet refreshment, but also a tangible way for people to show they cared. Ava's smile, despite her slight pallor, lit up with each customer. The local news station got wind of Ava's story. One balmy afternoon, a cameraman and a young reporter arrived with a microphone and a van. They filmed her as she poured lemonade into plastic cups, their lens capturing the rainbow swirl of medical bracelets peeking out from under her sleeve. She spoke in a voice that shook slightly at first, but then grew steadier. She explained how, though she was sick, she wasn't going to let that define her life. Her parents stood in the background trying to hide the tears welling in their eyes, brimming with pride and fear all at once. When the segment aired that same evening, the response from the community was overwhelming. Donations started trickling in from strangers. Cards and letters filled their mailbox. People Ava had never met started stopping by, leaving encouraging notes on the stand. It was the kind of warmth and unity that reminded everyone that empathy still existed in the world. With each passing week, the line at Ava's lemonade stand grew longer. The neighborhood seemed to have doubled its population overnight. Cars idled along the curb, and people walked from blocks away, drawn to the sight of that colorful booth and the sweet, freshly squeezed lemonade. Sometimes the house phone rang late at night, with calls from well-wishers in neighboring towns or even different states. Her parents had never realized how deeply one child's courage could resonate with complete strangers. Ava, in the meantime, struggled with the side effects of her treatment. Some days her legs ached, and she felt too nauseous to do much. Yet, whenever she found a pocket of energy, she insisted on manning her stand. She developed a routine: treatments in the morning, naps in the early afternoon, and lemonade in the late afternoon. It wasn't perfect, but it gave her purpose, and that sense of purpose made the hard days more bearable. Summer was nearing its end, and the oppressive heat meant that cups of lemonade sold fast. On a particularly scorching Sunday, Ava set up her stand earlier than usual. The sun bore down relentlessly, making the air shimmer. She wore a thin cotton dress and a baseball cap to shield her eyes. Her mother had applied sunscreen liberally, worried about any unnecessary strain on her already fragile body. Before long, the line of customers snaked down the sidewalk. A local church group showed up with matching t-shirts to lend moral support. A few teenage girls from Ava's school came by, helping serve when Ava needed a break. It was as if the entire town had decided that nothing was more important than this moment of collective kindness. The air was thick with the mingled scent of lemon juice, sugar, and hope. Despite the heat, Ava continued to greet each customer with a genuine smile and a heartfelt thank you. Her father, drenched in sweat, reminded her to stay hydrated, occasionally nudging a bottle of water into her hand. She noticed people whispering and glancing at the far end of the street. At first, she thought it might just be the typical stir created by the television crew, or perhaps a new group of well-wishers. Then she heard a collective gasp ripple through the line. Heads swiveled in unison, focusing on the towering figure striding casually down the sidewalk. It took a moment for her to process. It was him, LeBron James. The basketball legend, larger than life, was walking straight toward her lemonade stand as if it were the most natural thing in the world. A hush fell over the crowd as he approached. Cameras clicked furiously, and murmurs filled the air. People elbowed each other, uncertain if it was appropriate to ask for pictures or autographs. Time seemed to slow down for Ava. She had grown up in a family of sports enthusiasts, and her father was a massive basketball fan who idolized LeBron. She remembered hearing stories of the champion's triumphs, how he came from humble beginnings and used his platform for good. Now he stood just a few feet away, his tall frame casting a protective shadow over her. She wasn't sure whether to laugh, cry, or hide behind her lemonade stand. His warm brown eyes took in the sight of her, the stand, the crowd, and the words "Chemo Fund" taped to a jar in black marker. Her father found his composure first. He stepped forward to shake LeBron's hand and the two exchanged a few quiet words. Then, almost as if rehearsed, LeBron knelt down so he was at eye level with Ava. For a moment, the world vanished around them. He introduced himself with a friendly smile and asked how the lemonade business was going. It was such a simple question, yet delivered with genuine interest. Ava finally managed a small laugh, explaining how she'd been trying to help her parents pay for her chemotherapy. She told him about her summer, the countless cups of lemonade, and the community's outpouring of love. With each sentence, LeBron's expression shifted from curiosity to admiration. In one swift motion, he reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded check. He held it out to her, letting her see the figure written there, an amount that dwarfed anything Ava had made all summer. Before she could open her mouth in protest or gratitude, he gently placed the check in the jar. The crowd exhaled in a mixture of shock and awe. Cameras flashed like lightning. It was more than enough to cover her treatments. Ava stared at the jar, trying to grasp the magnitude of what had just happened. She was so overwhelmed that tears started streaming down her cheeks. With a look of gentle compassion, LeBron placed a hand on her shoulder. Then he gave her a grin, one that acknowledged her bravery and resilience. Reporters rushed in, microphones extended, questions flying. People wanted to know how he'd heard about Ava's stand, what had inspired him to come, and if he had a message for other kids in her situation. In a calm, reassuring voice, he explained that someone from his charitable foundation saw the local news coverage and brought Ava's story to his attention. He was touched by her courage, reminded of his own childhood in Akron, and decided to see how he could help directly. He commended her spirit, telling the reporters that for all his achievements on the basketball court, what Ava was doing, fighting her battle every single day with a smile, was far more heroic. He hoped that by offering his support, he could encourage others to do the same, to look out for one another in times of need. The outpouring of emotion in that instant transformed the entire scene into a celebration of human kindness. People applauded and cheered, tears and wide smiles mingling among friends and strangers alike. Ava, still struggling to absorb the enormity of what had happened, found herself enveloped in an impromptu group hug. More than just the money, she felt seen. She was not a statistic, not simply a cancer patient. She was Ava, fighting her battle, and a global icon had recognized her efforts. The electricity in the air was almost tangible, as if hope itself had come to life and taken a seat on the curb beside them. In a matter of minutes, this small lemonade stand became a beacon, shining a little brighter than it had just moments before. LeBron didn't leave immediately. He stayed, chatted with Ava's parents about the challenges of her treatments, and asked if there was anything more he could do. He even took the time to sign a basketball that a neighbor happened to have in their trunk, dedicating it to Ava. He promised that his foundation would keep in touch and that this wouldn't be the last time they heard from him. Before he left, he reached over and tasted a cup of lemonade, proclaiming it the best he'd ever had. Ava's face lit up, momentarily forgetting the discomfort in her body and the heavy weight of her illness. It felt like a scene out of a dream, almost too magical to be real. In the days that followed, the story swept through social media and news outlets across the country. Headlines read, "Local girl's lemonade stand gets a surprising visitor," "LeBron's heartfelt gesture leaves town speechless," and "Young cancer warrior wins big with stars' support." Donations to Ava's family skyrocketed. Letters, stuffed animals, and words of encouragement flooded their mailbox and porch. Businesses offered free services, and local restaurants delivered hot meals to the family daily. Her parents, once weighed down by the looming burden of medical bills, found themselves with room to breathe. This financial relief didn't cure Ava's illness, but it allowed them to focus on what truly mattered, her well-being, and fighting the disease without the constant dread of financial ruin. Ava's next hospital visit felt different. She greeted the familiar nurses with fresh optimism, carrying her favorite teddy bear signed by LeBron. The doctors, noticing a pep in her step, told her that while her battle wasn't over, her test results showed promising progress. Encouraged by the medical updates and buoyed by the tremendous outpouring of love, Ava's resolve strengthened. She even began talking to other children in the oncology ward, telling them how a small lemonade stand had brought her a new sense of hope. Some of them decided to start their own small fundraisers, whether it was selling handcrafted bracelets or painting pictures to auction online. There was a new energy in the hospital corridors, one that whispered, "If it can happen for Ava, it can happen for all of us." LeBron's involvement didn't end with a single visit. True to his word, representatives from his foundation reached out, offering additional support. They set up a scholarship in Ava's name, meant for children in her town who face serious medical conditions. The foundation also funded renovations for the pediatric ward, introducing more play areas and comfortable seating for families, so children like Ava could have a bit of normalcy during their long treatments. Ava's own story spread beyond her hometown, illustrating how a simple act, a child selling lemonade, could spark something enormous when compassion stepped into the frame. She realized that her situation was part of a much larger tapestry of people in need, and the wave of generosity she experienced might help those she'd never meet. Despite the joyful turn of events, Ava still endured the tough road of chemotherapy. There were days when exhaustion kept her in bed, and nights when she cried from the pain. Through it all, her parents stayed by her side, grateful that the financial burden had eased. She clung to the memory of LeBron kneeling beside her stand, of the check he dropped in the jar, and the vow that she was never alone in her fight. Sometimes, she'd wake up in the middle of the night and hold that autographed basketball close, recalling the warmth of that moment and how it felt like a shield against despair. When she was well enough to return to her lemonade stand, her father helped her set up a small display board. On it, she pinned notes and pictures from children across the country who wrote to say they were inspired by her story. Some kids had started their own fundraising stands, while others had just wanted to share encouraging words or artwork. Ava kept each letter, each picture, and each token as a testament that kindness could be contagious, that even in her vulnerability she could spark hope in others, and that was a beautiful thing. She received an invitation that fall to speak at her school assembly. With trembling hands and a racing heart, she stood on the gymnasium stage, looking out over rows of her classmates and teachers. Many wore t-shirts emblazoned with supportive messages. Others held signs that read, "Go Ava," or "We believe in you." She told them about her journey and how her lemonade stand wasn't just about the money, it was about doing something meaningful in the face of adversity. She recounted the day LeBron showed up, how it felt to be noticed by someone so famous and yet so human in his kindness. By the end of her short speech, the entire gym was on its feet, applauding. Tears shimmered in more than a few eyes. Ava glanced over at her parents standing off to the side, their faces flushed with pride and relief. That winter, doctors scheduled an important scan to evaluate the effectiveness of her treatments. The night before, a quiet tension blanketed the house. Her mother tidied the living room unnecessarily, while her father flipped channels on the TV without settling on anything. Ava tried to soothe her own anxiety by focusing on all the good that had happened. She remembered the visits from neighbors, the nights spent reading encouraging letters, and the unwavering love from everyone around her. She fell asleep holding that special teddy bear, imagining a bright future and a life beyond the hospital walls. When she woke up the next morning, she felt an unexpected calm wash over her. At the hospital, she went through the usual pre-scan routine, changing into a gown, getting an IV, and waiting in a room that smelled of antiseptic. Her father held her hand as the machine hummed and clicked. Then came the excruciating wait for results, each minute seeming to stretch into an hour. Finally, her oncologist entered the room, a broad smile illuminating her face. The scans showed a dramatic reduction in cancerous cells. While they still had more steps ahead, the doctor confirmed that Ava was responding better than they had hoped. It was the best news the family had received in months. Tears, laughter, and relief collided all at once, filling the tiny consultation room with a flurry of emotions. News of her positive prognosis spread quickly. The phone rang constantly with ecstatic congratulations from relatives, neighbors, and volunteers who had helped at her stand. The local news station ran another segment, highlighting her journey from a small lemonade stand to this encouraging medical milestone. People from around the country who had followed her story rejoiced through online messages and social media posts. Though she wasn't completely out of the woods, it felt like a turning point. A moment that reaffirmed how powerful hope can be when people unite. Ava could have let herself sink into the comfort of all that support and sympathy, but she refused to remain idle. Even as winter weather set in, she organized a hot chocolate version of her lemonade stand to continue raising funds for pediatric cancer research. Her father built a makeshift shelter around the booth, complete with a portable heater to keep her from getting too cold. She used the same bright colors from the summer, adding candy canes and festive lights. The neighborhood, not one to let a little cold stand in the way of goodwill, came out again in droves. She might have been the one fighting cancer, but she was also helping to fight it for countless other children. By the time spring arrived, Ava's battle scars, mental, emotional, and physical, told a story of resilience and community strength. The chemo had taken her hair, but her eyes still sparkled with that original glow that no sickness could extinguish. She had grown more introspective, more aware of the daily gifts that life offers. She relished the small joys, like the taste of fresh lemonade, a joke shared with a friend, and the warmth of the sun on her skin. She also looked forward to a world of possibilities. She talked about traveling one day, about writing a book to inspire other sick kids, and about the high five she planned to give LeBron whenever she met him again. People continued to inquire about her health, reminding her that she was never alone. Even classmates who barely knew her before all this happened would approach her in the lunchroom, offering to carry her tray, or just ask how she was feeling. The local hospital named her an honorary ambassador for pediatric cancer, allowing her to share her story with donors and hospital staff. She accepted the role wholeheartedly, bringing the same courage and authenticity that had made her lemonade stand so magnetic. Her mother often marveled at how she found the strength to keep giving back. But to Ava, it was a way of showing gratitude for every kindness that had been shown to her. LeBron, true to his word, checked in periodically through his foundation team. They ensured that Ava had everything she needed for her ongoing treatment and never hesitated to address any shortfall. He also invited her family to attend a basketball game when she felt up to it. That day came at the end of her treatment cycle, just before her final round of tests. Ava found herself at a professional arena, dwarfed by the vastness of the court, the lights, and the thunderous cheers of thousands of fans. She watched LeBron play with the same grace and intensity she'd seen so many times on television, only now she was courtside. During a timeout, he spotted her in the crowd, pointed, and gave her a thumbs up. It felt like a personal victory, as if he was silently saying, "Keep fighting, champ. You've got this." Months passed, and the final round of chemo reached its conclusion. A wave of fatigue overwhelmed Ava, but she held on to optimism. When the next scans came back, the news was what everyone had prayed for. The doctors could find no remaining trace of cancer in her body. She was officially in remission. The relief that soared through her family's hearts was indescribable. Though she'd need regular checkups, the darkest clouds seemed to have lifted. They gathered for a small celebration in the backyard, neighbors and friends joining in to mark the moment. Laughter replaced the tears of sorrow that had haunted those same faces not long ago. Ava raised a glass of lemonade and a toast, this time as a free-spirited child once again, albeit one forever changed by her experience. The story of Ava's lemonade stand and LeBron's shocking life-altering visit continued to resonate. Newspapers and websites occasionally revisited her journey, especially whenever philanthropic acts of kindness were highlighted. She became a modest local celebrity, but more importantly, she had become a symbol of hope and perseverance. Her stand still popped up from time to time, not for personal medical bills anymore, but to raise money for other children in need. She held bake sales, collaborated with school clubs, and remained an active voice in her community. Whenever she felt down or worried about the future, she reminded herself of that day LeBron strolled up her sidewalk, a simple moment that changed everything. Time had a way of moving forward, and soon Ava found herself finishing middle school. Her hair had grown back into soft curls. She had more energy now, enough to return to some of the activities she loved, like painting and writing short stories. She remained deeply connected to the cause of helping children who face serious illnesses. Looking back at her younger self standing behind that lemonade stand, she realized how powerful even the smallest act of courage could be when fueled by genuine love. She could still recall the feel of the wood under her fingertips, the sticky lemonade on her palms, and the sudden hush as a living legend stepped into her life. Years from now, Ava might attend college, maybe pursue a career that aligns with her passion for helping others. She might walk past a row of children setting up lemonade stands, remembering how it all started for her. She would wave and smile, perhaps even buy a cup or two, knowing full well what it meant for a child to stand out there with so much hope in their eyes. She'd remember that game-changing day under the summer sun, when LeBron James walked by and shocked everyone by offering not just a check, but a beacon of light in a world that sometimes felt too heavy. Until then, Ava continued to live each day with open-hearted gratitude. Her life story had taken an unexpected turn that summer, pushing her to the brink of her physical and emotional limits. Yet, The unyielding human spirit, embodied by a loving community and a sports icon's unwavering generosity, had guided her back. She carried that lesson with her wherever she went, that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges, kindness can burst onto the scene and change everything in a heartbeat. All it takes is one person deciding to show up, to make a difference, and the ripples of that choice can extend farther than anyone would ever imagine. And so she pressed on, holding on to that promise of hope for herself and for everyone who needed to believe that miracles can happen, even at a humble lemonade stand. As the years went by, Ava's story continued to inspire countless people. Though her battle with leukemia had been grueling, she emerged from it with a renewed sense of purpose. She carried the lessons of resilience, hope, and generosity into every aspect of her life. The lemonade stand had become more than just a fundraising effort. It was a symbol of determination, community, and the incredible power of kindness. Ava didn't stop at her own recovery. She turned her focus outward, determined to help others facing similar struggles. She launched a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing financial assistance to families dealing with pediatric cancer. She knew firsthand the burden of medical bills, the fear that gripped parents who didn't know how they would pay for their child's treatment. She didn't want any other family to feel as helpless as her parents once had. With the help of her community and the connections she had made through LeBron James's foundation, her nonprofit gained traction. She organized annual charity lemonade sales, enlisting volunteers from schools, local businesses, and even professional athletes who had been moved by her journey. By the time she was in high school, Ava had expanded her efforts even further. She worked with hospitals to create support programs for young cancer patients, offering them encouragement through letters, art projects, and mentorship. She often visited pediatric oncology wards, sitting with children who reminded her of herself at their age. She held their hands, listened to their fears, and told them that they, too, could find their own version of hope. She used her own experience to show them that they were not alone in their fight. One day, as she prepared for an event at a local hospital, she received an unexpected message from LeBron James himself. He had followed her progress over the years and was amazed at how she had turned her own hardship into a movement that helped others. He invited her to a charity gala hosted by his foundation, where she would be honored for her contributions to pediatric cancer awareness. The invitation felt surreal. It had been years since that fateful summer day when he had walked up to her lemonade stand and changed everything, yet he had never forgotten her. At the gala, she stood in front of a crowd filled with celebrities, philanthropists, and leaders in the medical field. When it was her turn to speak, she took a deep breath, stepped up to the microphone, and told her story. Not just about her illness, but about the kindness of strangers, the strength of her community, and the moment when one person's generosity had set off a chain reaction that transformed her life. She spoke about how a simple lemonade stand had grown into something far greater than she had ever imagined. The audience gave her a standing ovation, and when she stepped down from the stage, LeBron himself was waiting. He hugged her and whispered, "I knew you were going to do something big." Ava's life had been forever shaped by the trials she endured, but more importantly, by the love and support she had received. She knew that she would continue this work for the rest of her life, ensuring that every child battling illness would have a reason to believe in miracles, just as she once had. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the girl selling lemonade for chemo? How do you think LeBron James will react? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.